Alrighty, now we're recording. So welcome to my dog interactions webinar. We're going to talk first about dog play in general, because it's really important when you're monitoring dog interactions, when you're introducing dogs to be roommates at the shelter, kennel mates, or whether you're introducing them to potential new adopters' dogs. It's really good to keep learning about dog play. So this is not an exhaustive review. This is just a brief overview. I really urge you to keep on learning. There's lots of great sources to learn from. My old dog has decided to moan at me. Yes, I see you. Hopefully she will stop. She's a little silly. Yeah, so I think knowing as much as you can about dog play is really valuable in the shelter environment. So I will. We're going to go through, first of all, what good play looks like, when we should step in, how we should step in, and then the second part, we're going to go into how to break up a dog fight. And again, this is a defensive handling webinar. I do not want you using the tools that I describe just as willy-nilly on dogs. This is if they are biting each other and trying to hurt each other. I'm going to show you some of the tools you can use to keep yourself safe. So again, this is not dog training. I'm going to show you a little bit about how to interrupt when they're being a little too rough on one another. But the second part, how to break up a dog fight, that's defensive handling. That's just for emergencies. So again, the point I made yesterday is that solitary confinement is really hard on social animals like humans and dogs. It's less hard on animals that live a solitary life, but we are super social animals, and dogs are super social animals. And your street dogs especially, it's my little street dog who is moaning at me in the background here. They do tend to be pretty social. They've got to live in a world with other dogs. So having social contact with other dogs is a really good way to keep them happy while they're with us. It's also a great way to work with behavior problems, in particular with your fearful dogs, which I understand is a big portion of what you work with. Just kenneling a fearful dog with a friendly dog, I have found that dogs will listen to another dog when they won't listen to a human. I have a couple of fearful dog clients. I've shown you videos of some of them. And it's often my other dogs, my personal dogs, are super friendly. I choose really nice, easy dogs. I've done my time with the tough ones, and I'm old now, and I just want easy dogs. And they help me in my business all the time. And sometimes if a new dog is afraid of me and they see that my dogs think I'm cool, then the new dog will go, oh, she is cool. So having a friendly roommate can be super helpful. And this little street dog who is moaning beside me right now was really fearful when I first met her. She was my ex-husband's dog, and the first time I met her, she was hiding under the desk and spooky barking at me, just woo, 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 woo. I don't think I touched her the first couple times I was over, and just hanging out with my super friendly dogs was really good for her. She's 13 and a half now, and if you met her now, you would think she was a normal dog. She's had so many good interactions with humans and with the other dogs as a buffer for her. And the early days, I would say you can pet the brown dog, but not the yellow dog. So I would use my dogs to take the petting and attention that she didn't want, and eventually she started wanting it. So we'll also need to translate for adopters. Sometimes somebody will adopt a dog and take them home and call me up and say, oh my God, my dogs are killing each other. And when I go and look at it, they're just playing. Actually, a lot of the pictures in here where the dogs look like they're fighting, they're just snapshots from play where I just caught an expression that looks really scary. So a lot of the pictures of the Doberman and the Pit Bull, they're good buddies. They're just very dramatic players. So we need to be able to tell people what's normal. And on the flip side, we need to be able to say, oh yeah, that's not a good match. These dogs really are not getting along, and either give them some help with reintroducing the dogs or find them a dog that's more appropriate. And in doing so, it's important not to micromanage. So my background in dog play, when I lived in San Francisco, I worked in dog daycares for about 2.5 years. And that was really valuable. Just like 2,000 hours a year of eyes on dogs taught me more than a lot of the formal education that I've done. And I was a micromanager in the daycare. I was on top of those dogs. If one dog was humping, we had a webcam where people could see their dogs from work. And if their dog was being humped or looked like they were not having fun, I would step in right away. With shelter dogs, and with my personal dogs, I'm a little more laid back. I will let the dogs talk to each other. If I have a client dog who I want to stop humping other dogs, I'll put her in with my Doberman, and the Doberman will tell her in a way that I couldn't possibly, that this is not cool. Like, you will stop this right now. She won't hurt them, but it's very clear the way she tells them. Whereas if I just interrupted, the dog never actually learns. They never get to have that discussion. So it's a fine line to know when to let them have the discussion. You need to know your dogs. I know my Doberman does not bite hard, but she does make a lot of noise. So she's a very good teacher, and finding those teacher dogs and pairing them up with the dogs they can help is really important. The other reason that we do a lot of dog play over in this country is that we don't want to adopt out dangerous dogs. I told you about the dog fighting bus that my pit bull is from, and about 40% of the dogs from that case were dogs who would kill another dog if they got loose. So the ASPCA's philosophy is that we are not going to send out dogs that are going to kill other people's pets. So this is true of the shelters here too. We really don't want to send out dogs that, if somebody leaves the gate open, are going to be dangerous to the community. And if we don't do these assessments in the shelter and find out the play style, like, it helps us make a good match. But if we don't do the off-leash assessment, the adopter's going to do it at some point. At some point, they're going to drop the leash, or Aunt Betty's going to show up with her Pomeranian at the door, or they're going to just decide to go to the dog park and find out. So we need to know what our dog's level of sociability is and what level of management they're going to need. And it's better that we do this at the shelter when we've got the tools and the knowledge to break up a fight if it happens, that we can use muzzles if we need to. And it's amazing enrichment and exercise. I have done a lot of walking of shelter dogs, especially early on. I was a dog walker at our shelter, and she's really vocal today, I'm sorry. And 20 minutes of just off-leash playing with other dogs in a play area is about the same as 2 hours of walking. Theodore, you guys can stop that right now. I may have to do some interrupting of play right here, because that's, yeah, she's bothering you, isn't she? So rather than getting volunteers to take dogs out and walk slowly for hours and hours, if we can get those dogs out and get their heart rate up and get their tongues out, we can meet their exercise needs a lot faster. And again, we can use it to help the dogs who need help. So I'll go through first what good play looks like. Then I'll go through, when and how I personally step in. And then I'll go through what to do if things go wrong and it does turn into a fight where dogs are trying to hurt one another. So just a little bit about play in general. It's a self-reinforcing behavior. Look at the faces on all three of these individuals in the picture I've put up. They're having a great time, and it's really reinforcing for humans to watch dog play. And as a function, as animals, play is kind of practice for real life. That's what kids do. If you watch kids playing, they're practicing sort of real life skills for later on, how to interact with other humans. They might play some of the roles that they're thinking of taking on in later life. I was always the veterinarian. I would take all of my stuffed animals and I would wrap up their legs with bandages and care for the animals. And that certainly followed through into adulthood. I have 19 animals on my farm that I care for every day. Most animals don't play into adulthood. If you look at, rabbits, but a lot of wild animals, it's not particularly useful once you're an adult to expend all those calories playing. But dogs and humans are two of the species who actually do play into adulthood. So I think this is one of the reasons we bond so strongly with one another. So back in the dawn before time, when I went to, when I was an apprentice dog trainer, I was told that there was a 50-50 rule. So one dog had to be chasing 50% of the time, and the other dog had to be chasing the other half of the time. One dog had to be rolling over half of the time, the other dog had to be rolling over the other half of the time. And I'm here to tell you that that is not a thing. So if you hear a trainer saying, oh, that's not good play because one of them's always chasing. So Aleli, my little street dog, she rarely chases other dogs. Really rarely is she playing the wolf. She's always the bunny. She loves sort of like when she was younger anyways, going, oh, are you gonna chase me? And that was her favorite thing. If she could get a dog to chase her and she could be the bunny, that made her happy. And other dogs love to be the chaser. My Doberman is always the wolf. She's like, okay, who needs to be gotten? So if people start thinking, you know, it's not good play because it's not perfectly reciprocated, the more important thing, like if I put Aleli with a dog who also wanted to be chased, not much play would happen. But when I put her with a dog who likes the other role, one might be chasing 90% of the time, but it's still good play. So you're looking at how the dogs feel about one another rather than applying arbitrary rules. And there's some concerns with size, particularly in terms of co-housing in a shelter. You don't want to have your Great Dane in with your teacup Yorkie, but a lot of it, especially when I'm getting the dogs out for play during the day, is about who gets along with whom. So the angle's kind of bad in this picture on the left, but that little dog is about 6 pounds. You can see a little better in the picture on the right how small he is. And my pit bull is 50 pounds. So that's roughly half in kilos. And I was really careful with this little guy. He came in for a board and train, and because my dogs are 10 times his size, some of them, he was definitely confined when I was not home. I definitely would not leave a 5-pound dog in with my 70-pound Doberman, just in case she stepped on him and really hurt him. But he did a lot of playing with my 25-pound dog, who was the smallest one and the youngest one. And, you know, despite the fact that she's still 4 times his size, they were a really good match play-wise. So here's a really mismatched size couple. This guy's well over 100 pounds, and Theodore's less than half that. But this was one of the favorite dogs that I brought home. Theo just loved Abe, so I'll let you watch a little bit of really good play between very size mismatched dogs. The Aussie's in it, but you can see it's the other two who are playing.
May, why is it unmuted?
Sorry, not muted. You can see the Australian Shepherd is kind of the third wheel. He's watching the play, but it's the other two who are really interacting. In some ways, 3 is the hardest number because somebody's always the odd dog out. But I just love that video of Theodore and Abe. So when I'm doing introductions in the shelter, I like to do it with the leash dragging wherever it's safe to do so. I'll generally introduce them through the fence first, and if it looks good through the fence, I will bring the new dog in. So the dog who's our greeter does not have a leash on because he is rock solid. He's just going to stand for inspection and say hi to the new dogs as they come in. The little dog's actually from a hoarding case. She's really fearful. I think she had to be carried to the play yard. She was stress shedding in the entryway, just like shaking and really scared. But when we put her in with the other dog, she just lit up. And this is really common with hoarding dogs because other dogs are safe, humans not necessarily. But one of the reasons I like to leave the leash dragging for introductions is because one of the play motions that dogs make is that really quick little, this dog's really popcorny in her moves. There's lots of popping around. And if you're holding the leash, and especially if you've got a tight leash and the dog does a little play bow that's sudden, you may yank back on the leash. And then she's just been punished for giving a friendly signal for the other dog. And that's not fair to her. So here's a little bit of introduction with a really well-matched pair. So there's a lot of things I look for in dog play, but one thing that I learned from Dr. Ian Dunbar a million years ago is to look for elbow bends. And we saw this a little bit in our first webinar last week, where there was that boxer who was being very social, and he was doing lots of sort of paddling movements with his front paws. So elbow bends are in general pretty good, where they do the play bow, those little popcorn movements, little paw wiggles. There was lots of paw movement with this dog. And I told you I was not going to show any videos twice, so I'll show you this one again, and just watch how much her elbows bend when she is soliciting play with our greeter dog. And he is wearing a leash. Sometimes the greeter dog is not wearing a leash if we know him really well. And you can see the next dog's ready to come in and meet them, just waiting in the catch pen. This is the Asheville Humane Society, the shelter that is in the town where I live. So a wonderful thing that I watch for that I really like is self-handicapping. So somebody asked me yesterday, how much rehab did I do on Theodore to make him a good dog after he came from a dog fighting case? And my answer is none. I taught him some obedience. I taught him to walk on a leash, but he is who he is. And one of the things that I loved about him at the shelter was we could put him in with a fearful dog and he would make himself really small and find a way to make that dog love him. So here he is at my friend's farm. She does not have a fence, and her new little black poodly dog is a runner. So he's on the longest long line ever, which is a bit of a risk. I would not normally do this because if they start rolling around, you can end up with them tangled up. But the other two dogs are not on leashes, and we managed to not get anybody tangled during this intro. But there's some really nice self-handicapping. You'll see Theodore making himself really small, sort of rolling over, showing he's no threat. And you'll see the little black poodly dog he'll mirror it. He'll do the same thing right after Theodore does, which is another thing I really like when I see it in dog play. How little he's making himself. You're too cute. So I like when I see mirroring. That's in general a good sign. So Theo rolled over and then the other dog rolled over. So another cool thing that dogs do when they're playing is they will monitor one another. So I have 4 dogs, and I often have friends who bring dogs over. So this is actually my assistant cat. She is doing some training with the big floofy dog, who's a client of hers, and she brought her to the farm to wear her out a little bit before she takes her out for some training. This dog's pretty reactive on leash, and getting a few beans out helps her be in a better mindset for training afterwards. So right here, I had just adopted Rue, my small dog. She's really new to the family, and I know that Nola's a really nice, friendly dog. But she's huge. I mean, she's an enormous dog, and you'll see Theodore try to interrupt the play. So this is really cool. He's being the playground monitor, and he'll try to run in between them and just sort of split them up. The dog will usually come in from behind when they're splitting. There's that's certainly what he does 3 times here, and the first 2 don't work. But the 3rd time he goes in and he actually bumps Nola with his shoulder and just says, listen, slow down. This is my new little sister. I'm a little concerned about how big you are and how fast you're running. And it's pretty cool how he slows him down.
Oh, that was quick turn.
There's 1. Oh, too slow. 2.
Nice split, Theodore.
Boom.
Oh!
So that 3rd time, she noticed it. She's like, okay, right, I'll slow down a little bit. So just really, it's great to have a dog who can help you by slowing the play down on his own. And you notice he's gentle. He's not hurting them. Oh, got someone in the waiting room. So rolling over is something that a lot of trainers interpret differently. Like I said, some people follow the 50-50 rule. If you want to learn more about dog behavior in general, the Dog Spies blog on Scientific American is a really good one. They break down scientific studies into normal language that normal people can understand. And this is the, I'm not going to scroll through the whole article, but this is, if you're interested in why dogs roll over, it's really often a combat tactic. It can be self-defense. It can precede sort of a dog telling the other dog to back down. And Julie Hecht's a friend of mine. She's a big fan of Theodore's, and she actually asked for some video of him playing for this blog. So if you want to read that, it's the easiest to understand interpretation of a study that came out on dogs rolling over. So Theo uses this a lot in self-defense. He is orthopedically challenged. He's had 1 knee down. He's got bad elbows. And when these girls get to be a little bit too much, if he rolls over, he can use all 4 of his legs to keep them off him. And so this is a self-defense move. So they'll run around. Both the girls are faster than he is. When they catch him, he rolls over like this, and then he just flails his paws. And you can see they're keeping their distance from the flailing paws. He's not hurting them. He's just going to get them to back off because there's more of them than there are him. It can also be an invitation to play. So I'll play this video. I told you that Aleli, my little yellow dog, does not like to chase. She doesn't particularly care for wrestling, but she can be seduced into it. And here's Theodore really trying. He's rolling around on the carpet trying to get her to wrestle with him because that's his preferred play style. And you'll see the Doberman coming in as a playground monitor at some point in here. So he's kind of self-handicapping. He's making himself small. He's making it easy for her to roll him over. Oh, you got me. Little self-defense with the Doberman. Oh, you got me. Look how strong you are. So it's not working really well. Like, she's not wrestling with him. She engaged a little bit, but he's trying so hard. There's a pretty significant age difference between these two. They're about 7 years apart. So here's a little more mirroring. This is one of the best videos I have of mirroring. This is really that 50-50 play style that we used to think was what we needed to do with all dogs. But you'll see one dog play bow, the other dog play bow, one dog chest bump, the other dog matches them. Really cool, really well matched pair of dogs here. There's some nice mirroring going on. Here's a little bit of dissimilar play styles. So I told you these two are pretty athletic. They love playing chase. They love running, and Theodore cannot run. He's just not put together for it. So he likes to have a wrestling bed out, even outside. I'll put a bed on the lawn for him if the weather's okay. And he's trying to get the girls to come to the bed and wrestle with them, and they are having their own fun. But you'll see what happens.
Run.
So they're really rough players, these two. You can see how I get all of my still shots of dogs looking scary, but they get along fine. They're okay together most of the time. I will, now that Theo's getting older, Maggie's about a year younger, but she's much more athletic. I will I'll interrupt her sometimes because if his elbows are painful, she doesn't realize that. So sometimes I'll stop her when she's doing that. Here's a little bit of gentle and dainty play. So just, I've kind of got words for different types of play styles, and the important thing is to have compatible play styles. So those, we had some chase in the last one, some sort of prey and predator type play style, and then we had a little bit of wrestling at the end. My 13-year-old dog cannot do that anymore, so she is a very gentle and dainty player, and these two will play. Again, this is a step counter on Rue. That's not a shot collar. It sends me a text if she leaves the property, and she hasn't run away in a long time. I think I've got the fence shored up, but it tells me how many steps she takes in a day, which I find fascinating. She runs 6 to 12 miles a day on the farm.
Hush. Shh.
I like putting music to dog play. Just one of my habits. I usually have a song going through my head when I'm watching them play, so now you guys get to hear it. So that was really nice, reciprocal, very gentle play with those two.
Hush.
And often your older dogs or your more fearful dogs or your smaller dogs have that play style. So some of the videos in this presentation is from Dogs Playing for Life. Amy Sadler very graciously opened up her archives to me. And all of the dog fight videos are courtesy of her archives. So really glad to have actual video of people breaking up dog fights, because I never seem to turn my camera on when I've had to do that. So this little brown dog is a really fearful dog. She's, we call them a pancake dog over here. They have to be carried out to the play yard. They're kind of catatonic. They're kind of flat and fearful and don't move. But once she gets in with the other dogs, this dog really changes. And like I said yesterday, we really want, every time we interact with a shelter dog, that we want them to get better, not worse. And you can see how this dog helps her feel better about where she is right now.
Okay, so it's June 2nd at Barks, and this little tan dog, this little female.
Well,
Yeah, no, it's a good one. This little tan female back here is like a pancake dog with people, scared to death with people. And so she just came out, and we're using Mateo, who's the bomb-proof dog here, to show us how she feels about dogs, which apparently she knows that she's a dog.
look at that.
Yeah, so a question came through in the chat about how you choose your greeter dogs, and you want one who's a little bit neutral, but who will play if the other dog wants to. You don't want your overwhelming, like my Doberman could not be a greeter dog. She is just way too much. She comes on really strong, or she's not interested. It's kind of hot and cold with her. Whereas Theodore is a great greeter dog. Like he can match whatever energy comes through the gate. So it's a fearful dog. You saw him making himself small with the little one. You've seen him give it right back to Maggie if she's being rough. And he can flex to a lot of play styles in between, except running and chasing. He just can't physically do that. So dog play isn't for everybody. I've certainly had dogs who are just not interested in play. A lot of dogs, as they get older, are less interested in play. I mean, I am not a young woman anymore. I don't go to nightclubs and party all night and dance with strangers. I like being on my farm. I like being on my own. And that doesn't make me a bad person. That doesn't make me a scary person. It's just everybody's an individual. So not everybody needs to play or wants to play. This dog on the right was also from a dog fighting case. He's a fair bit older than Theo. I think he's about 7 in this picture, and Theo's probably 2 or 3. And Dino's owner was told, because he's from a dog fighting bust, he can never be with other dogs. He can't be trusted with other dogs, which was the knowledge we had at the time. And his owner had not had him around other dogs. He was very careful with him, had him on leash all the time. But he fell in love with a dog trainer, not me, another dog trainer, who had dogs. And he sent Dino to me and he said, "Can you tell me if this dog is dangerous?" And you can see that Theo taught him how to play. And it was kind of a shame. Like he's a pretty good player, but he didn't have that opportunity for he was seized as a puppy and he never got to play because of where he was from, which I think is unfair. So I've shown you a lot of good play. I want to give you some padding before I traumatize you with some not so good play. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I personally step in. People have different techniques for stepping in, but definitely we need to be the playground monitor, especially when we're introducing new dogs. We really want to make sure that they have a good experience at the shelter. We want to avoid fights. And that's where fences and muzzles and leashes and harnesses and different equipment can help us keep the dogs safe. But we need to know what's good first, and then we start deciding where to interrupt. And everybody's comfort level is different. Like my comfort level is pretty high with even pretty rough play at my farm because I know my dogs well, and I know they have good mouths, and I know they're all very good communicators. Just sometimes with the older ones, I'll protect them a little bit. But they mostly communicate really well. In a shelter situation, you're going to need to do more stepping in because you don't know your dogs and you want to make sure they have a good experience. So again, play is just meta communication. It's communication about communication. So the function of play is practice for real world behaviors. So you saw the practice hunting where they're chasing each other. You see the practice fighting here. They're just play fighting. And sometimes they will practice sexual behaviors, which people get very uptight about. But and certainly you shouldn't interrupt if the dog's being bullied. But sometimes it's just like an invitation to play. Just hump, 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 come on, you got to chase me now. And I think sometimes we interrupt a little too much. I had to do it when I worked at the daycare. I didn't want a phone call from mom, but when we're letting shelter dogs interact, I'll show you one test you can do to tell if the dogs are okay. So again, make sure they have compatible play styles. Make sure the ones who like to be chased are in with the ones who like to chase. Make sure the play is reciprocal. I always tell my dogs, if you're not both having fun, then it's not fun. And that's when I step in, is if one's clearly not having fun. But it's really important to know your dogs. These 2 are boarders on the left. The other 3 are my personal dogs. And you can see how compatible this particular group is. They're all really good players. So this is the test that you do. So you might see these 2 playing and think, okay, this is a little much. I showed you a little snippet of them wrestling, and a lot of you might be uncomfortable with that level of play. And certainly if you don't know the dogs and you don't know that one of them isn't going to escalate and say, oh yeah, you and whose army, and turn play into a fight, that's called tipping over. One thing you can do is a consent test, and this is where I like having the dogs on some sort of equipment with a drag line so that we can remove one dog. So if I thought, okay, this Doberman looks kind of aggressive, she's got the more upright posture, she's kind of got, she's showing a lot of teeth, and he looks a little overwhelmed. What I'll do is a consent test. So I would have a drag line on her if she was if this was a new introduction. And I would just pick up the drag line and walk away with the dog that I think is the bully, the dog that I think is being too much for the other dog. And then I'll watch what Theodore does. So I'm walking Maggie away, and I did this when I first introduced them because I was a little concerned about how rough they could get. And every time I pick up the leash and walk away with Maggie, Theodore comes running after me and says, "Hey, what are you doing with my friend? Bring him back. We were having fun." And I'll look at him and think, well, that looked stupid. It didn't look like fun, but I'm taking the bully away and you are following, asking for more. Like he wasn't following fearfully, just saying, and furthermore, go away. He was following a soliciting play. So I would drop Maggie's leash and say, well, I guess you guys are okay because you're coming back for more. But sometimes I've certainly had the experience where a dog's been too much. Sometimes it's Theodore is being too much for a new dog who's a little more fearful. And I'll pick up Theo's leash and walk him away. And if the fearful dog just sort of shakes off all the cooties and moves away and says, "Thank you for getting that pushy dog out of my space," then I know that was the right thing to do. So you can do a consent test whenever you want to, as often as you want to, and let the dogs tell you whether they were okay with the interaction that was happening. So here's a consent test I did in Australia. This, the lighter colored dog who's wearing a muzzle was part of a cruelty case. He was seized as a puppy. They did not do play groups at this particular shelter. They were like, what if the dogs fight? So they just didn't do it, which means their adopters had to do the tests with other dogs, and that didn't always go well. So this little pitty looking thing, because he's a pit bull type dog, Australia has breed specific legislation. Everybody was super nervous about him. He grew up in the shelter. He's about a year old here. He has never been with another dog. He's a little reactive on leash. He's an idiot in his kennel. He was housed in an area with really reactive dogs all around him, and that behavior is so contagious. And they were like, he's really mouthy. He jumps up, he grabs at clothing. So I showed him how to play tug of war and teach him how to use his mouth appropriately and say, you know, what would really help is if he likes other dogs, get a little bit of dog play. So the first thing I did was I let him meet a stuffed dog, which is not a perfect test. It's a better test with fighting dogs than with other populations. And he's a pity type dog, but he's not from a fighting case. He was starved. But I let him meet the stuffed dog just to put them at ease, or not. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. And he went up to the stuffed dog and he sniffed the nose and he sniffed under the inguinal area and he sniffed under the tail. And it was a really normal greeting with the stuffed dog. And so that made me feel a little more comfortable about letting him try with a real dog. But we put a muzzle on him just because everybody was super nervous. And we brought out an opposite sex dog who's just a good greeter dog. She's calm, she's friendly, she'll play if the other dog wants to play. And I'm letting them interact, and they actually look okay to me, but the folks watching were getting nervous. So I do a consent test. I pick up his leash, I walk him away, and watch what the golden does when I take the muzzled pity type dog away.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're concerned about that, then go away and see. You might need some time. Bit of a shake off. She's okay with that. If you're concerned about the dog, certainly take them more away. She followed them. Yeah, so the dog, I took the little pitty away, and the other dog followed. And I was this video's from 4 years ago, and I was just back in Australia last year, and I found out that the pitty was adopted into a home with another dog, and he did great. So just that little intervention helped. He'd been up, they weren't sure if they were going to be able to adopt him out because of the mouthy behavior, because they weren't sure if he'd be safe with other dogs. So this is how you can find out.
Right?
So the things that I look for, the positive signs of good dog play, I look for ears that are back and rotated to the side. We talked about that in the body language. You can see both of the dogs on the right are doing that sexy ears. I like the popcorn, the loose, playful movement. I really like elbow bends. You'll see a lot of elbow bends in these pictures. And this is your classic play bow. This is, I actually took the little white pitty home because he was so awesome, and fostered him, found him actually he went to a client of mine who had a shy dog who needed a friendly dog, and he's been a great therapy dog for her. But he was a wonderful greeter. This is how he said hi to every dog who came in the play yard. Just, hello, here's a big old play bow. Do you want to play with me? Really awesome, awesome dog. This is actually some video from the dogfighting bust where I got Theodore from, and this is one of the moments when I totally fell for him. This is Athena. She's our female greeter helper dog. She was just rock solid with everybody we put her with. Theodore's the male helper dog, and they had both kind of had a hard morning. We played them with some dogs who really needed some help. So we're doing a little bit of recovery time for them. And this is super important. If you have dogs who have a bad time in the play yard, you really want to make sure they have a good time afterwards. So say that muzzle introduction had gone wrong and the pitty in the last video had pinned Golden down with his muzzle on and traumatized her, I would want to then immediately get a friendly dog in with her and kind of balance out that bad experience. We really want to make sure there aren't bad experiences. I would have stepped in. You could see I was carrying all of my dog fight tools. I would have stepped in if it had turned into a fight. But here's a little bit of flirty play. So I do like putting opposite sex dogs together. They tend to be a little more flirtatious, especially from dog fighting busts, because they fight same-sex dogs. And look how flirty these two are. You can see why I had to bring Theo home. Really sexy ears there. And these are two intact dogs. In a cruelty case, we're not allowed to spay or neuter them. So you do have to make sure that the females are not in season before you put them together. But she was not, and you can see Theo is being very sexy with her, but she's able to, it doesn't turn into anything sexual because she's not in season. And it was just a lot of nice flirtation, and it was good for both of these dogs to have a good experience. So here's a little bit of Chase. The fawn dog is from the same dog fighting bust as Theodore. Sorry, there's a lot of pit bulls in this. This is kind of what we have in shelters here, and they're kind of one of my favorites. I love watching them play. So his sister is a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, so she's a little bit smaller. Finn's about 35 pounds, and she's tiny, tiny. And there's lots of chasing and shoulder rolls in this one. The dogs sort of go over on the shoulders. See that nice roll she did at the end? Finn's a little bit older, but he's still a great player. Another positive sign, at least with dogs who know each other, are these little flea nibbles. Sometimes they'll do this to you. It's a bit of a grooming behavior, and Theo does this with dogs he really, really likes. Play bow for Maggie. Elbow bends. Then they knocked me over. But you can see it was play solicitation in that case. He's like, come on, let's play. So things that I watch for, some of the warning signs, I watch for hackles. Kenya was a dog of mine who put her hackles up for everything, for squirrels, for new living animals of any sort. She never did it with humans. She loved humans, but she was always a little conflicted around other animals. I look for stiffness, those freezes. It's hard to see until you get good practice at it, but because it looks like the dog's not behaving at all, but watch for the dogs who freeze. You'll see that in a number of the dog fight videos right before the fight starts. The dog freezes and the other dog doesn't listen. Going from an open mouth to a closed mouth, particularly in Singapore where you have warm weather all year round, dogs should be panting a lot when they are relaxed and happy, and when they're going from relaxed to closing their mouth, they may be thinking about using that mouth. And again, you're going to watch the eyes. If you can see the eyes well when they're playing, watch for that hard eye. So here's Theodore having a not good experience. This is a dog who used to run away and visit us. She lived about just a few blocks away at the last place that I lived in North Carolina. And on Theodore's property, she was great. They played really, really, really well. She was a really big submissive grinner, and I was afraid she was going to get shot running around North Carolina, walking up to people and showing all of her teeth. So I did a little fundraiser and we built a fence for her owner, and I took Theo over to play with her, and it did not go well. She was not as nice to him on her own property. She's got her little dog friend, she's got her babies there, her human babies, and she was, it was not nice play. So you can see that they're getting stiffer. There was a lot of sort of upright, sort of wild stallions play, a lot more teeth showing than usual. And we cut that play session short. Stella can come to our place to play, but Theo can't go to her place, evidently. Other times you should step in. Again, if one dog's clearly not enjoying it, these guys in these pictures are actually having fun. Dino's taking a big wipe out, trying to jump over Theodore. But if one dog's really not having fun, you want to step in. You can do as many consent tests as you need to while you're figuring this out. And the one thing that I found with Dino was he had one trigger for fighting, and it's unusual, but he would go from humping Theodore into growling and snapping. He never bit him. It didn't turn into a real fight, but I had the drag line on while I was learning about this dog. And with him, every time he started humping, I would interrupt, because I knew for him that could tip over into a fight. That's not a common thing. Theo's really good at getting out of a hump. He just rolls over and uses his paws. So I don't usually interrupt. I let him tell the other dog. The other thing you might see, and you'll see it in some of the dog fight videos, is escalating arousal, where the dogs are not self-regulating anymore. So would you step in here? You can see the young dogs being kind of annoying to the old dog, right? But he did a good job he rolled over. He used his self-defense. He was like, you stop it. And she listened and she backed off. So if this continued and she keeps going back and going back and going back, and he's like, I told you I need my nap time. I'm getting older now, and I would step in, but that little interaction, I would not. You're always going to protect puppies. The less experienced the dog is with dog play, the more micromanaging I am. I really want to make sure inexperienced dogs and puppies do not have a bad experience in the play yard. I don't allow bullying. If my young dog had come back and come back and come back and come back, and she's not listening to Theodore, then I'd step in. And the goal is that both dogs should be better after a play session. So here's a puppy. Would you step in on this one? Is the puppy having a good time?
Ready? Don't be such a chicken dog. He wants to play with you. Oh, that's really nice. That's very cute.
You can see the adult dog is super friendly. Like, this is my friend's foster puppy. She was found without parents, so Allie's doing all she can to make sure she has good experiences with other dogs. But Karen's right, the puppy's scared. Her body language is all fearful. Her tail's tucked, she's crouched down. she's moving away, and the big dog, he's being super sweet, but she's not reading that. She's like, you're too big, you're too much. And the reason the video stops there is because Allie did step in and protected her puppy, but her office mate ended up adopting this dog, and they're good buddies now. So what about humping? So the thing I want to do with humping is you can do a consent test. Like there's the kind of humping that's really annoying to the other dog, where the other dog is acting like the puppy was in that video, just like, please stop, please stop, please stop. And if the humper is not listening, absolutely step in and make it stop. Here's two of my dogs from a lot of years ago. Tell me do you think the large dog is being traumatized here? Yeah, video's not playing, but you can imagine what it looks like. And she is fast asleep. She absolutely paid no mind to this dog. If a large dog humped her, she would tell them, but that little poodle, she's like, I don't care. So it's optional whether to step in. If I had company, I would step in and say, stop it. But neither dog's being traumatized here. So it's your call if they're both okay. And with Theodore, he's just really good at getting out of a hump. He just rolls over and stops it on his own. And it's more valuable if the other dog says no and it's heard. What if you can't do a consent test because both dogs are not leash trained? Yeah, that's a whole different kettle of fish. You have to leash train the dogs before you can do a real consent test. With the population of dogs you have, I'm guessing that they are more social than a lot of the dogs I'm seeing on this side of the pond. You can also try greetings through a fence and see how they do. Really often, if it's super, super friendly through a fence. And I'll give you some tools to break up a fight that don't involve using a leash. But you do need to separate them. If you have a fight, you've got to separate them after the fight. So I would really prioritize leash training the dogs. Oh. So tell me if you'd step in here. I have the best horses in the world. Shake it off.
I just gave you a bath, Theodore.
We're seeing a lot of rolling over and
Dog, you're almost
self-defense, and
dirty.
a lot of
Let's go.
people,
Come on, guys. Let's go.
a lot of people are uncomfortable watching
Maggie,
these
come
two
on, Max,
play.
let's go.
So she's made Theo rolled over like 7 or 8 times at this point. So I'm trying to get them to do something else. I'm like, for some reason, the riding ring is their favorite wrestling mat. So it's your call. If those are your personal dogs, you can step in any time. A lot of people would do a consent test when you see a dog rolling the other dog over and over and over, that sort of repetitive, like, I roll you, I roll you, I roll you. She likes to go in and sort of measure their heads. It's fine to do a consent test. And that's what I did when these two first met quite a few times. So here's a case study. This was a little dog at a shelter. Actually, the shelter I got Rue from, my little scruffy dog. And they said, can you please bring Theodore? We've got this dog who's super reactive in his kennel. He's not leash trained. This is kind of like the dogs that you guys are dealing with. You can see he doesn't even have a collar on because he doesn't know what a collar is. He doesn't know what a leash is. So again, we're using a bomb-proof greeter dog. They asked me to bring Theodore specifically because they didn't know their population. They turned dogs over pretty quickly there. And I brought Theo out to make friends. And here's what happened. He was scared of Theo. He was just too big. So I said, bring me some little dogs. And we'll see if there's a little dog that he likes. So they brought me out Rue. This was the first time I met her. And she's very appropriate. She went over, she's like, well, this one doesn't want to play. Let me come and see you. And I thought, you're an awesome dog. And then we just kept bringing out little dogs because he was just glued to the corner. I'm like, let's get some little dogs out. We'll get them playing with Theodore and we'll see if they can seduce him into coming out of his corner, not put social pressure on him. And there he is out of his corner. Look what happened.
Don't you come back to the afternoon? We really want to walk this yeah. He's trying to get it.
I love
Look at him.
it.
Look at you. Look how great you are.
Look at how sweet this is.
Maybe she play together really well.
Look at that. Not only does he have a tail, but he's approaching the big dog that he found so scary. So this was about half an hour. This didn't take very long. So just knowing that he was dog social really helped them place him because he was very barky in his kennel. So type in the chat box some of the things you're seeing in this little play session. Some of the body language.
It's Chance and Taz.
Nice play bows.
Just kidding. This is Chance and Rocco. Oh, this is the sleeps too much dog. Rocco was returned for sleeping too much. Yeah.
So there's some vocalization in there that people might find concerning, but overall that was some nice play. The black dog is using the picnic table to back the blue dog off a little bit, which is entirely appropriate, and nobody needed to step in. It was a nice little session with some very social dogs, lots of play bows, lots of bent elbows there. So again, let's type in some of the things we see. It's sometimes easier to see it in slow motion. So if you're new to dog play, the one thing with slow motion is it always looks a little bit more freezy than it is. If you saw this at regular speeds, people are concerned that it looks like this playground monitor is moving in slowly and creepily and freezing, but in regular speed, she's not. She's just monitoring play and deciding if she needs to split these two up. You see the intact male goes in for an opportunistic hump, but it doesn't work. In part, I think, because Mama Dog's doing some playground monitoring here, but look at these faces. Look at these big, happy, wide smiles, ears back, relaxed eyes, a lot of the friendly body language. And it's good to have a playground monitor in the group. So I'm gonna go through how to break up a dog fight if things go badly. I'll go through some of the equipment that I think you should have on hand at the shelter if a dog fight breaks out, and I'll go through the safest way to break them up. Anytime two dogs have their teeth out and are biting, you are putting yourself at risk if you walk in there, and especially if you have to go to one of the hands-on techniques. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. There's it is dangerous to break up a dog fight, but sometimes somebody's got to do it. And I'm going to show you the safest ways I know. So it's really important to work as a team. I'm going to skip this video. It's just people playing tic-tac-toe really badly and not coordinating. And sometimes it's that way during a dog fight. So we're going to go through the types of fights. We're going to go through the options of things that you might want to have in your fight kits and some of the techniques to know if you need to step in with dogs. So it's better to know this and not need it than need it and not know it. And the other thing is, just as we talked about in the defensive handling yesterday, the things we want to do naturally are usually wrong. Like the first dog fight I had at my daycare, I reached in for the collar. Like there was a scuffle, nobody was hurt. and I reached for the dog who I thought was the instigator right as the other dog was good. He was just going to bite right beside this dog's neck, and I stuck my hand right into it. And that was my first doctor's visit for a dog fight. He just laid my finger open. And he was meaning to snap at the other dog, but I stuck my hand in there. I stuck it right by the neck. And where do dogs bite? Even in play, it's around the face and neck if it's a ritualized combat that most fights are. I mean, one thing to remember is most dog fights are just spit and noise, and they sound scary to us, but when you break the dogs up, there's no damage. So, I'm going to talk about the ones where they are biting and they are trying to do damage and they are drawing blood on one another. We want to step in. So the first thing to consider is how many dogs, how many handlers. Ideally, you will have one dog per combatant in the fight. If you have 5 dogs in there and 2 of them are fighting, sometimes the better thing to do is to get the 3 non-combatants out. And that's why I like having linked play yards, so you can get the ones who aren't fighting out. So if I have volunteers in the play yard, I tell them, if there's a fight, your job is to pick up the leashes of every dog who's not fighting one at a time and take them back to their kennels or take them into the adjoining yard, so that my 2-dog fight does not become a 5-dog fight, because it's a very contagious behavior. A dog can jump in on it. I'm sure you guys have seen that. If there's just one of you and 2 dogs fighting, which has happened to me at home, I'm going to concentrate on the aggressor. I'm going to concentrate on the dog who is the instigator. Sometimes they're equal participants, but usually one is the one who started the fight, who's, if you get them out of it, the other dog's going to back off. If there are more dogs than people, you're going to start with the ones that you think are the aggressors. So there's 2 general types of fights I'm going to talk about. There's sort of the slash and dash fights where they grab and release. And then there's the gripping fights where they hold and shake. These need to be approached differently. Because if you've got a hold and shake fight and you pull that other dog off, you could end up doing more damage. So having the right tools is really important. Have a plan and recognize that you have time to set things up in your favor so that you stay safe. So the safest way to break up a fight is without putting your hands in there at all. So I'm going to go through hands-off techniques first. We're going to keep our drag leashes on if they're new dogs that are being introduced. You usually have some water around a shelter. You might have a hose. You might have a water dish. I carry a squirt bottle on my belt. That's my #1 interrupter, because it's not, you can aim it for just one dog. It's not going to interrupt everybody. And then there's different sprays and vision blocks. And as promised, I'll show you how to use a break stick at the end. So the things we want to do, we want to grab the collars. Our fighting style is hitting and kicking and punching, but if you add pain to a dog who is biting another dog, especially a gripping fight, and you add pain, they may clamp down even more. You don't want to put your hands in or near a dog's mouth. My ex-husband used to break up dog fights by grabbing the dog by the mouth and trying to pry them apart, which gave him some nice scars. It's really dangerous. They're, especially those back molars, they're made for grinding through meat and bone. And guess what your hands are made of? You don't want to put your body in between dogs when you're breaking up a fight. You want to, in general, break it up from the back. And if there's a large dog, small dog situation or a large dog puppy, you may need to pick up the puppy and get them out of the yard, but be careful not to sort of dangle them. If I showed you my little 6-pound toy poodle, I did have to pick him up a few times when big dogs were approaching who didn't look that friendly, but I'd make him disappear. He would go down he went down my shirt a few times. I would at the very least turn around and block the visual, because if you're holding a little dog and a big dog comes up and grips and gravity pulls them down, you can cause a lot of damage. The other thing I want you to hear next time you have a dog fight, I want you to hear my voice in your head saying, you have time. So I told you Theodore's from a dog fighting bust where the dogs are bred and trained to grab and shake and do maximum damage to other dogs, sometimes even kill them. Guess how long these fights take? They can last an hour. I've heard of them lasting 2 hours, and this is with 2 evenly matched combatants who are both trying to do a lot of damage. So you have time, and sometimes it's better. I actually had a fight right in this very kitchen year and a half ago with a foster dog. She grabbed my little yellow dog by the face, and she was gripping and shaking, and I think she would have killed her if I hadn't been here. It was a really bad attack. My assistant cat was here. She grabbed the hose. She grabbed that. She grabbed the faucet from the sink. It's on a hose, so she took it out and sprayed both dogs down, trying to get them to stop. Didn't work at all. And when I saw that wasn't working, Kat had jumped on top of the foster dog who had hold of Lily and was holding her head still so that she couldn't shake and do the damage. And I realized we've got to use a brake stick. I need some better equipment to get her to let go. So I ran out to the car, had a brake stick in the car, came back in, and was able to pry her off. And now I have a brake stick in the kitchen drawer right beside me. So not that anybody here is likely to fight, but I never want to have to run out of the house to get one again. So the exceptions to having time is a large dog, small dog situation. If the airway or blood flow is blocked, you don't have much time, but you still might be better off going out and getting the tool and coming back than sort of ineffectively trying with what you have and then having to go get the tool anyway. So like I said, my favorite tool is water. You can aim it at just the dog who is fighting and nobody else has to get wet. You will hear, this is one of the Dogs Playing for Life video. I don't want you to think that Dogs Playing for Life is an organization in the United States that teaches shelters how to get their dogs out playing. And I've done some contract work for them. I was on a gig for them when I brought that little white dog home. And I'm going to show you a lot of dog fights, but I don't want you to think that's all that happens. They have many thousands of hours of videos with no fights in order to get this footage. And they do allow the dogs to have discussions rather than interrupt. Because sometimes, really often, the dog who says knock it off, it works. But I'm going to show you the ones where it doesn't work, just so you can see. Hey! So you can see some actual fights being broken up.
You see that? Hot.
So you can see that it just took a little bit of water to instruct the dog that she was overreacting. You did not need to tell the dog off that sternly. And once they'd broken them apart, they were able to interact again and learn from that lesson. So there's lots of ways to have water in your play yard. This is a rechargeable water fire extinguisher. Hoses will work. I had somebody come to one of my seminars who broke up a fight in the play yard or in the dog park using just the water bottle she had with her. In the kennel, you might have a water dish. So I'm kind of going through these in levels of invasiveness. So I'm in favor of using whatever's the least invasive method. So start with the gentlest thing possible. So your noise interrupters are going to interrupt every dog in the yard. So even the one in the corner who had nothing to do with it is going to hear these. So that it's not my favorite, but the advantage with noise is it kind of scatters everybody. And if you've got a 2-dog fight that might turn into a 5-dog fight, sometimes the noise interrupter will break them apart and you can get them apart. And this is an option with your dogs who don't have leash manners yet, but I'm still not sure how you're going to get them apart without something on them. So all of these can work. Your shake cans, compressed air. In my kitchen, I could have grabbed some pans and tried to make some noise if I didn't have the brake stick. And sometimes your voice is enough. So again, try to avoid high-pitched noises. It's fine to call for help. If you're going to use an interrupter, use your voice first so that at some point you won't need to use the interrupter. So here's a dog that regularly comes out and tries to chase me on my horse. She's harmless. She's not trying to grab hold of the horse. But I don't The horse is a little nervous. You can see his ears back. He doesn't know this dog, so I just use my voice to tell her to go home.
Go home. Go.
And she listens to me. We do this all the time when I'm riding my horse around the neighborhood. So here's a verbal interrupter. I think her spray bottle fails, so she just uses her voice, but you can see it works.
Oh, he's fun. They're like kids.
Yeah.
Get a little hot.
Yeah, he
Slow
is.
down.
Hey! Good boy. Good. Good. It's not.
So you can see he was responsive to her voice, just like the dog in my neighborhood. You can also put some pebbles or pennies in a bottle or a can and use that to make a rattling sound that will often cause dogs to scatter. So here's what that looks like. You can also use a larger jug, and that one you can sort of put in between the dogs as a bit of a visual block.
Can. Nice.
Good.
Perfect. Ooh, and I got that. Perfect.
You can also put something in between the dogs. So if this is happening in your house or in an area where you've got furniture, you can put a chair in between them. I've seen shelter dogs interrupted with a trash can in between them. This is called a pig board. It's for sorting out pigs. It works pretty well. You can put it right in between the dogs. This was at a dog daycare and they had them all over. And your goal, of course, is to get a door in between the dogs, or a gate, get one of them on the other side of a door so they can't continue fighting. So I'm going to break up these really aggressive huskies with the pig board. You're just going to bring it in from the back and then keep the dog blocked and try to get them into another area or get them to a place where you can pick up the leash. Other things you can use to block the view, you can throw your sweater over the dogs, towels, blankets, anything you have, try to block their view. And I've seen people use actual physical doors to put in between the dogs to get them to break up. This is a pet corrector. I don't know if you can get them over there. It's kind of like the computer keyboard cleaners in that it makes a hissing noise that a lot of dogs don't like. It's a lot louder though. So you're going to see this little dog come around and do a full-on grab and shake fight with the dog on the bottom. And this guy's going to walk in with the squirt bottle. It doesn't work, and you'll see my friend Allie come in from the other side with the pet corrector. It's a little hard to hear because of the wind noise, but the moment where the dogs break out is the moment where she makes the hissing noise with her pet corrector.
It's on. It's on, you guys. Nicely done.
And I want you to see how calm those two are. Like I'm not that cool yet when I break up a dog fight, but I try to emulate them. That's what you want to aim for. There's no screaming, there's no flailing, there's no running around. Citronella spray is another thing that can break up a fight. If you are able to get this, I'm not sure if you are. This is what I carry when I go out riding my horses in case a dog approaches who is aggressive. You can just sort of spray it in front of the dog's nose in a circle. A lot of times just the smell of lemon will back them off. If the dog's gripping, you can spray it into their nose and mouth. If they're super determined, it won't work. And don't use mace because that'll make everybody blind. The air horn is it is a good thing to have in the play yard as a call for help because everybody in the shelter will probably be able to hear it as well. And it is really loud. It'll scatter everybody. So this is a last resort. I don't like using the air horn, but sometimes, especially in the video I'm going to show you, 2-dog fight is about to turn into a 7-dog fight.
Hey, here comes Rowdy.
So it's pretty amazing that he managed to get his foot on the leash of the right dog just as he broke up the fight. So that was, you could see all of the dogs starting to amp up in that one. The other interesting thing is she had the people on the outside back away, and that's something I had to be taught to do. It's our kind of our instinct to all glom in and hover over the dogs when they're having an altercation, and it's actually better for the dogs if you walk a little further away rather than hovering over them going, oh, are you going to fight? Are you going to fight? You can set them off on each other, as Amy says in that video. Using a muzzle is a great idea. I understand it's hard to muzzle train the particular dogs that you have, but sometimes it's the right tool. And I'll just demo what that looks like. This is a shepherd who was really aggressive through the fence, so they decided to muzzle him, put him in with an opposite sex dog who is super flirty. And you know that he can't hurt your helper dog now, and you will see her really soften him up. I don't think the shepherd has ever seen another dog. His elbows are stiff, his whole body is stiff. There's no sort of unlocking of those elbows. But Susie Q is a great helper here.
Oh my God, is she adorable?
She's a perfect dog.
We told her to back off there, and she did.
So you see how he told her too much, and then she backed away?
So that's a little bit of muzzle work. I'm going to show you two hands-on techniques, and then we're done. And these are, as I said, more risky, but sometimes, like when I had the fight in the kitchen, I knew I was going to need to unlock those jaws to get her to let go of my smaller dog. So I'm going to show you three techniques. So the first one is the wheelbarrow. This is for dogs who are going rah, 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 but they're not holding on. The dogs in the video I'm going to show you are not fighting. I'm just breaking up two dogs who are playing nicely just so I have a video. This is where you're going to grab the dog. It's the top of the hind legs. So you're going to lift and sort of swing them around to the side and sort of try to get them heading towards a gate. You may need to back them all the way through a gate and let go of them if it's a bad fight. But often I just break them up like this, and then when I let go, they're okay to play. I've just split them. So your decision what to do once you've got the dog's wheelbarrow. The issue though is if you have the dog like this and you spin them around and you're still holding onto the hind legs, what's going to happen when you let go? Is this a dog who might redirect on you, which is why I like having a gate, get them through the gate, or use this to separate them and then get your drag leash and use that to get them out. So this is something you could potentially use with your dogs who are not leash trained, but I worry about redirection risk if you don't have a way to sort of get them out of the yard. So do this near, I like the smaller yards with gates nearby. I was once asked to play dogs in a 5-acre pasture. I'm like, if they run to the other end and get into it, I'm going to be out of breath by the time I get up to them. So my helper missed his dog. Ideally, there would be one person on each dog. But again, this is not for dogs who are holding on. This is for dogs who are just making, or grabbing and releasing or making a lot of noise. You can pick them up by the hind legs and just move them back. And you want to turn them so that they can't see the other dog. So if you have more dogs than you have humans, first thing you're going to do is get the dogs who are not fighting out of the yard. You can then secure one of the dogs who is fighting with a leash. You can use the waist leash like I'm showing you here, and then you can remove the other dogs. So obviously these dogs aren't really fighting, but this is what it looks like. The chickens are optional. So we're imagining Theodore is attacking the husky. Usually tries to play with the stuffed dogs when I bring them out. And with him, I didn't do the full hind leg pull off just because he's got bad knees and I don't want to mess him up for the sake of the video. If it was a fight, I would be okay with doing that. And then I get him into, this is called control position. So you can see he's not wearing a collar. I have no way to control him. But if I stand over him with my legs over his hips, I can grab his scruff. I'm just scratching him here because I don't want him to be traumatized by being pulled away from the husky. But if he was trying to fight, I would have hold of his scruff if he wasn't wearing a collar. And this is what the waist leash looks like. Just pass the leash through itself and then get it attached to the chain link. If it's got a clip on the other end, whatever you've got to attach it to. So if you've got a gripping fight like this, you're not going to be able to just pull the dog away by the hind legs. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to break up a gripping fight. And one way is by feeding the bite. So play along with me. I know it's late, but do this at home. Make a fist with one hand, and then I want you to bite the fist with your other hand. Now try pulling your hands apart, and you feel how your biting hand almost wants to hold on harder. Now I want you to try to keep the same bite strength with your bitey hand and push in with your other hand. And you feel how that's kind of pushing your fingers apart. You really can't keep that bite strength if you're being pushed into. That's kind of the principle behind feeding the bite. So the video I have, there is one dog is gripping the other one. You can see that they're both kind of facing the same direction at the beginning of the fight. So what, this is another one of Amy's videos, what she does is she moves her dog so that he's more at a 90-degree angle, so she can push him into the bite. And the other person is stabilizing the other dog. So she's pushing the biting dog into his bite, and that makes him release and back off. And you will also see that she is in control position. She has the dog between her legs, and she has a good grip on him so that when he does release, he's not going to be able to spin around and bite her or go back and grab the other dog. So this is the wrong angle. You can't push him in at this angle. So watch how she brings him around before she feeds the bite.
That was bad.
Is
that
it
Woody?
And you can see she gets him facing the other direction while the other person can get the victim dog off to check for injuries. You want to break their eye contact if you can, if the dog's small enough to turn around after you do a wheelbarrow, feed the bite, or use the break stick. Try to break that eye contact while you hold the dog. So using a break stick, this is only for gripping fights. You're not going to go in there with this into a slash and dash fight with your sword and try to break them up. This is only for dogs who are holding onto another dog and you need to make them let go. It's really important to get into that control position first. Stand over the dog, hold the collar or scruff so that when you do break the grip, they cannot come around and bite you. Really, really important. I did not do that the first time I used a break stick, and I almost got redirected on, and I have remembered it from then on. You can buy them in this country on hog hunting sites. This picture in the bottom right, this is actually just a wooden doorstop. I've seen people use plastic tent pegs as a break stick, so you can sometimes use makeshift ones. The ones that I mostly have are, I traced my favorite one at the shelter that I got Theodore from, because we always had to have them in play groups with a dog fighting population for sure. And I traced the one that fit my hand the best, and that's the one that I have. And these are available for sale. I can give you the link for that. It's berriesbreaksticks.com. They just fit my hand pretty well. And this is one that somebody sent me as a demo, and it's a wooden one. And you can just have somebody make something this shape. It needs to be tapered at the end, fairly thin, so that you can wiggle it in before you break up the fight. So this is what control position looks like with a dog who has a collar on. If they don't, you can grab the scruff. Sometimes it's better to grab, in the video, you'll see that my old boss, Pam Reed, is holding the dog's scruff despite the fact that he has a collar. The fight I broke up in this kitchen, I actually did have hold of the collar, and the collar broke. It had a plastic clip, and it broke as soon as I got a good grip of it. So scruffs, I've never had a scruff break. So there's the scruff grip. And you can see where my legs are right behind his rib cage, but in front of his hips. And he can't pull forward or back from that position. So where you want to put so first you get in control position, make sure that dog can't redirect on you. And if you look at a dog's skull, they've got a nice little area here where there's small teeth and there's a bit of a gap, and that's where you're going to wiggle the brake stick in. So it goes right behind the canines. You don't have to get it very far in. You want to wiggle it in maybe an inch, and then you can twist it. And that it's the twisting motion that makes the dog release. So here's my old boss, Dr. Pam Reed, who weighs less than 100 pounds soaking wet. She's a very tiny woman. This is a very powerful dog. This is from one of the worst dog fighting cases we worked, where many of the dogs were really dog aggressive. And you can see her when she's twisting, she tries both ways to see which way the dog is going to let go. And it's a fake dog that the dog is biting. We use the fake dogs for the first screening with dog fighting cases. It's not as effective a test with a normal population of dogs, but it really helps us with the fighting dogs not to hurt our helpers.
Yeah, make sure it's sure.
And you can see why the control position is so important. And this is a dog that the ASPCA would not adopt out from a dog fighting bus. If he's going to do that to the neighbor's dogs, if he ever gets loose, it is not safe to adopt him out. But the nice thing is the United States used to euthanize every single dog that came out of a dog fighting bust, and we don't do that anymore, thanks to Michael Vick, the quarterback, whose dogs did actually pretty well once they got him out. He was not very good at breeding fighting dogs. And Pam Reed was one of the people who assessed the Michael Vick's case. So I am going to give you my contact info. So it's really important to have the right tools, to realize you probably have time. Make a plan, try the least invasive things first before you go to hands-on. That can be dangerous. And there's my contact info for you. And I am going to stop the video and go through all of the questions that I see coming through. So thanks for coming. Here is stop recording. Find my record button.